Well, welcome to episode 2 of The Science of Advertising, the show where we talk all things neuroscience, memory and effective communication. Today's panel we have Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath,
a one-man panel,
the preeminent expert in the field of education and neuroscience with a focus of learning, memory and attention, and myself, your host, Jonathan Rowley. Today, we'll be looking at, we're a little bit delayed because we've had lockdown measures. We've had COVID-19 that's been, spreading throughout the world and especially Australia. So we have been on lockdown measures for quite some time. Yeah. So we've actually been released into the wild, and we're here today to talk through a couple of campaigns that went live just pre-COVID and also discuss COVID-19 and what was happening in the advertising market. So today we'll be looking at Burger King and the infamous Moldy Burger.
The Moldy Burger.
And we dig into, was it effective, was it not? And we're looking into the science of that. The other campaign we're going to be looking at is what advertisers are doing in the current market and what they have done with COVID-19 and coronavirus. What have they put out to market, and some interesting insights there. And then we're going to jump into one of our classics. So we're going to have a look at a very famous creative. So we're going to look at the Cadbury Gorilla. And a bit of Phil Collins there. And we'll
That's our blast from the past segment.
The blast from the past. So a very famous creative, but why was it so famous? Why was it so effective? We'll really be drilling into the detail and what key learnings can we take away from that. So first of all, the Moldy Burger. Burger King. Let's jump straight into it and have a look what was produced a few months ago by Burger King and what went to market.
What a difference a day made. 24 little hours. What a difference a day made. I know in my heart the difference is you.
All right, so Dr. Jared, I have some very strong opinions on this, but I'm very keen to hear your thoughts because we had some quick discussion. We actually, I think we're aligned in some ways, but we may have.
See, I'm holding on to a secret. So why don't you start by tackling this, and then I'm going to jump on your back.
Cool. So for me, there's kind of a few things to consider. So one, they're going quite aggressively at McDonald's, looking at the Big Mac and their burgers, and literally you can pick up a burger 10 years later and it looks very, very similar thanks to a lot of preservatives. Yeah. So for me, I can nearly see how this unfolds at both a brand and a marketing and exec team level. They've got this new idea, we've got no preservatives. How are we going to go out in a big, bold, brave way? Then all of a sudden the marketing team and the ad team are working together and they come up with a concept. How about we show a burger that actually deteriorates and molds and it turns into this really sort of hideous mess. It demonstrates that we don't have any preservatives, and that really tells our story. And then they're going to the exec team. The exec team's like, I'm really nervous about this because no food brands especially, want to promote an image that will potentially really put off consumers, and have that physical reaction that it'll elicit. So for me, there's kind of an agenda there by the marketing team and the advertising team to really go out in a very bold way and create a name for themselves. Because it's rare that you get an opportunity to do that. And for them to actually, I think they're incredible salespeople to get this across the line first and foremost.
So doing something like this, you reckon, is more important or bigger for the marketing company than the brand itself?
Oh, 100%. You see, and this is where the diversions come in market. You've got a lot of creative directors and a lot of marketers that absolutely love this because they love the big idea. And all of a sudden, everyone that's been involved in this campaign has become pseudo-famous because everyone in the community is talking about it. So their stocks have risen quite dramatically as a result.
It was like a couple weeks ago, we were talking about that ad that had Jason Momoa, and it felt more like an ad for him than for the thing he was advertising.
100%.
So this is really an exercise by the marketing company to say, look at what we can do as a marketing company.
And most marketers wait there for the opportunity, and this is their opportunity to actually leverage this.
Yeah.
So then I come up from a revenue perspective. How effective was this? What does it actually mean? And more so, what are consumers going to do as a result of it? So for me, I think there's some incredibly clever thinking that's gone in behind it, first and foremost. And I actually think there's some genius there, because you go, how best can you articulate this message that there's no preservatives? It's a challenging messaging, and that would have been the brief.
Yep.
And to show a burger that literally molds and decays, over a 34-day window, which it was shot via time lapse, incredibly clever to demonstrate the key message that they were looking to promote in a big, bold, brave way.
Yep.
So in terms of the creative agency, they've actually delivered in full in terms of the idea. But for me, I look at it from a consumer, and majority of our decision-making is unconscious. It sits in our reptilian mammalian brain, an limbic system. And this is where you see an image and you've just got the immediate emotional response that you have to it. So for me, the immediate emotional response is that of repulsion rather than, an association of desire, happiness, appetite, that salivation that you get that I just want to eat that burger.
Yeah.
For me, it was even interesting looking at the creative that the Hungry Jack's or the Burger King logo, was actually black and white, wasn't branded in colors. So they've kind of shied away from really owning it quite reverently as well.
The Burger King
the Burger King. It's a black and white logo, and it's quite small and it's quite subtle. So they didn't really want to associate their brand and logo or their branded IP with the moldy burger. So I think they were also conscious of that. But then for me, this is where the big challenge is. You're reliant on consumers to logically think through this, going, oh, that's a moldy burger. Why is it a moldy burger? Oh, it's a moldy burger because there's no preservatives. Because it's got no preservatives, I want to go and eat a Burger King. Whereas for me, the immediate memory association is moldy burger through to Burger King. That is now locked. But for me, I'm actually really curious to get, because you're holding out on me, like, what are your thoughts?
So I think you've totally nailed it. Let me just real quick. Did you like the ad, or do you think it was ineffective? So if you were to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, what would you say?
I think in terms of the amount of attention it got and free PR and press and advertising and the commentary around it, it was a phenomenal success. So from that perspective, huge win.
Boom.
But in terms of revenue through the doors, increasing their customer base. For me, that's the real measure of success. That is a massive question mark I have.
And we'd love to dive in to see what impact did it have. Because like you said, it was probably, if we could look at the revenue for the marketing agency, probably through the roof. Hey, we got new clients. Everyone loves us. But what did it do for Burger King? Did it work? And
Correct.
Just like you said. So I think you laid out all the perfect arguments for why it should have worked, why it didn't work. Now, all you got to do is, and this is what, my first degree was in film. So this is back when I was, 18 years old. And I just remember the best thing my film teacher ever said to us was, so we'd pitch our ideas and he would always listen. He'd say, that's a really good idea. Now, how are you going to turn that into a movie? And there's where we really started to learn that a cool idea is a cool idea, but now you have to draw it into how do people think? How do people learn? How do people remember? And you've got to make that cool idea an actual usable, complete product. Moldy burger is a cool idea. What they needed was someone to sit down and say, great idea. How do you turn that into an actual campaign? And that's what no one did. So think about it. How do we make it a campaign? You just hit all the right things. Our natural instinct when we see mold is revulsion, because mold makes us sick. See mold, get sick. We could cognitively work our way through that and to go, okay, well, mold might actually be good and stuff. But like you said, most people aren't ever going to do that. So how do you circumvent a natural reaction? You bring in a secondary natural reaction that sits above that. So in this instance, we could have had a number of other things, including expert opinion. What if you had an expert talking over it, discussing mold? You go watch, they just came out with a documentary a couple months ago called Fantastic Fungi. You watch that and then watch this commercial, you will love mold because you learned all about the depth in mold, and now you've got a great response towards mold. It's how do you change the underlying immediate response? So the big thing, they could have done it in 2 easy steps. 2 things missing.
Give it to me.
Well, let me say 3 things missing. Step number 1, distinction bias. That's what they missed here.
So when you say distinction bias, just for everyone that's tuning in, what do you mean when you say distinction bias?
So human beings, nothing sits alone with us. We only know something is good, bad, right, wrong, hot, cold, on, off, when we can compare it to something else. There is no such thing as a standalone stimuli. Everything we do is a comparator to something else. So when I tell you that my product is $10, who gives a rat's ass? I don't know if that's good, bad, right, wrong, or indifferent. But if I say mine's $10 and everywhere else is selling it for $100, now you have a distinction bias. Oh, it's less than that. Or if I say it's $10, but everyone else is selling it for $1, oh, why is it so expensive? Just, I need something to bang it against. Nothing on its own matters. So when we do this research all the time in science. Give me 3 bowls of water. The middle one is warm, left one's cold, right one's hot. And you can do this at home right now. Put your one hand in the cold, one hand in the hot, let them sit there for about a minute, then put them both in the warm, and you'll notice, even though it's one temperature, both your hands register it completely different because it's comparing it to where it was before. Here, we don't have a distinction bias. All I see is moldy burger, which is gross. But if the point you're trying to make is the mold is good and no other burger is going to give you mold because you have preservatives, you need to run a 34-day time lapse on a Big Mac from McDonald's and show that it ain't changing at all. So now we have a distinction where the mold is different than something else. Now I can start to say, okay, why would this be good or bad? So step 1, distinction bias. Bring in something to compare it to. Step 2, you preempt this whole commercial. So this whole campaign needed 2 steps. Step 1 was a whole set of commercials that just show things molding with an expert talking over it. Like distinction bias. Here's a tomato that doesn't mold. Here's one that does. And the expert then runs over it saying,
Love it.
Mold is a powerful thing because it demonstrates health. Look, we put mold on this tomato and it won't eat it because preservatives are unnatural. They will kill the mold. So you have 6 months or I don't know, whatever, 6 weeks of building up where you don't even show your burger. You're showing the ingredients of your burger, a tomato, a lettuce leaf, a piece of cheese, just the bread. One's molding, one's not, with an expert saying the mold is good. Then you bring in the complete burger for the second part of the campaign. Boom. Left side of the screen, nothing's molding. Yours molds. Now I've got a distinction. I've got an expert. You've trained me to recognize that mold is good for food. Step 3, how do you end the commercial? You reverse the clock so the last image I see isn't a moldy burger. It's your healthy burger today.
Love it.
So the last image can't be gross. The final image, when it's gross, I tap in, I go, I remember all these buildups. Oh, great. Reverse it. Let me see it healthy again and say, come in and get our good preservative-free burger. They had it. They just didn't think their way through it to make it a powerful enough ad to make me actually want to go out and buy this burger. So step 1, distinction bias. Mold is only bad or good when I have something to compare it to. So give me a comparator. 2, you got to train me. You got to prep me for this. Don't just show me your product gross. Piecemeal it out, bring it together and finish on a high note, not on that note.
Thank you, because that's amazing insight. Because for me, I was very adverse to it because all I was seeing is the correlation and the code that happens between the moldy food item and a brand. Do you know what I mean? And that's what sits. Whereas for me, it's nearly now there's a pre-work, like it's a longer narrative. So we actually need to prime the audience that mold is great. And why is mold great? So there needs to be like a prime or a narrative building up to it.
Yep. Then you've different, like you were saying, my natural reaction is reversion. Cool. Spend a couple weeks giving me a secondary reaction. Teach me that it's good and then do what you want to do with it.
And then I love the reverse the frame. Do you know what I mean? So the last image that you're left with is a really appetizing and, if you're looking at the marketing textbook or the advertising textbook for anything food or beverage, it's an image that elicits literally like a saliva gland starting to, a really appetizing type of reaction rather than one that's repulsed. So amazing insight, and thank you for leaving me hanging because that makes a lot more sense now. But yes.
Could have been good. It was a good idea. I just wish they had my film school teacher to say, cool idea. How do you make that into a movie? What do you got to do with it now?
Absolutely love it. All right.
Big one was distinction bias. It's one thing to look at a moldy burger, but if they would have put that next to a burger that's not molding, now I got something to bounce it against. Mold on its own, all I got to do is think about my past. So it's like I have to add the distinction. So anytime I've seen mold, it's nasty. You got to give me something to compare it against. $10 is only expensive when everything else is $1. Mold is nasty. You got to give me something.
But I think that in essence was the challenge, that the image of mold, our natural reaction, which is very unconscious, is to run away from it and not put that anywhere near our mouth. And that's kind of the challenge, which is why they've also gone out with it, because it's very bold and it's literally the antithesis of what the marketing textbook is or the playbook is for food and beverage.
I reckon they missed that. If you would have shown me a McDonald's burger over this time span of 30 days and it looks exactly the same, that would be revulsive. That would be revolting to me. That's disgusting.
But then I'd also go to the type of clientele that goes to some of these institutions. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
Their primary concern may not be health and nutrition.
Yeah.
So are you even talking to the right audience? Is the right message for the right audience? So there's also that to consider as well. Do McDonald's customers actually give a shit that their burger in 30 days still looks exactly the same as what it did?
Is that even full of preservatives? You're right. Who cares about preservatives might be people who would care too much to even go to McDonald's.
So do you even have the right communication for the clientele that's coming to your institution?
That I hadn't considered. That's interesting because you're absolutely right. People who you would assume who preservatives and organic foods and stuff, that's who would love that commercial, who would say, look at the mold, that's healthy, that's great, that's awesome, are not the kind of people who go naturally eat a burger.
Totally. So then but are you trying to attract a different clientele that you aren't your typical Burger King customers going, hey, now we don't have preservatives in our food. Maybe you should consider us, because it is fresh produce as such.
Oh, see, this is why I don't know the marketing, but that's such an awesome idea. Now, how do you attract someone like my wife? If the entire point of marketing is, so you've got your customer base, keep them happy, but we got to draw on more. How do we draw on people that we know won't come to our restaurant? We tap into their desires. They won't come because they think we're unhealthy. Look at how healthy.
But still, and if that was a strategy, very clever, but then you've missed that loop in both the priming in terms of the education, but then you've also got the association between now the brand that it is and mold, which is not a great association to have. So I think there's still several areas that needed to be sort of addressed, but very close. But for me, the amount of PR, press and publicity it got is huge.
Was worth it.
But we'll change gears slightly now. Let's talk all things advertising and COVID-19. There has been a lot of brands that have come out in market with new updated messaging, trying to be relevant to the change in market, which means isolation, IsoLife. So what does this mean? Well, let's just have a quick look at a compilation of a variety of ads that have gone to market during COVID-19 and what they've been saying.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978.
For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years.
In 90 years.
For over 100 years.
Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin.
We will do what we've always done.
Take care of people.
We're people.
People.
People. People.
People.
People.
And family.
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 Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family.
Families are families.
Families.
Even now.
Especially now.
Especially now.
Right now.
Now more than ever.
More than ever.
Today, more than ever.
Today, more than ever.
In times like this.
At times like these.
During these difficult times.
In these troubled times.
Challenging times.
Trying times.
In these times of uncertainty.
During this time of great uncertainty.
During these uncertain times.
During these uncertain times.
In uncertain times.
In uncertain times.
Uncertain times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
This unprecedented moment in our history.
It's time of social distancing.
While things have slowed down.
As we turn more inside.
While the doors may be closed.
While the distance between us has gotten bigger.
The more we stay apart.
We still find ways to stay close. Even when we're apart.
Even if we can't stand closer than 6 feet.
We can all stay connected to work, school, and most importantly, to each other.
There's still ways to touch each other.
All without leaving the comfort and safety of your home.
Without leaving the safety of your home.
From home.
Home. Your home.
At home.
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 Home. Home. Home.
Home. Home. Home. That's the key.
Buick and GMC are here to help.
Con Edison is here to help.
here to help.
Our teams are here.
We are here.
We're here.
We're here.
Here for you.
Here for you.
We're here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you. We'll be here for you.
Runnings is here for you.
We're still here for you.
We're with you. We're part of your community.
So you can trust us.
You can count on us.
And we'll get through this. Together.
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 Together. Together.
We're together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
MasterCard.
All right. Well, I might just step in here and I'll just give a bit of perspective from brand and advertisers and what happened behind the scenes. So we had this conversation with many of our clients. They were coming to us going, this is a change of market. This is a change of play. Consumer behavior is not what it was a few weeks ago. We need to communicate to them on their level and have a huge amount of empathy. How do we do it? So for me, I got it. But the challenge from both a creative and production and pulling something together is 1, we don't have access to talent or film crews. 2, really short deadlines. They wanted to mobilize this in a week or 2. So we literally had to get scripting ideas and everything else together without access to film crew or any sort of stage production. So our options were literally use what's in the can, what have we got historically, or what can we get, either paying for license or license fees for specific footage. And then you got the narrative, and a lot of brands wanted to tell their brand story. Do you know? So for me, I've just got a couple of interesting outtakes, which you can see through this. So the structure of most creatives have been show some imagery that connects with the audience. Is that empty streets, empty offices, empty stadiums, empty roads? Then it's going, how long you been in business? Since 1978, over 80 years. People, family. Then it's right now, difficult, uncertain times. And then the distance between us. There's a gap, there's a void. And then that sort of is how it all finishes up. And for me, it's really intriguing because it's literally a lot of the branded work they've done has been neglected. They don't reinforce and remind any of their historic branded structure. So you could literally slap any logo on that particular creative and it could have done a job. Was that a General Motors ad? Was that a Ford ad? Was that a Chevrolet ad? It doesn't matter because it all could have looked the same. Yep. And this is now even worse than that, is that so many ads going to market all sound like a musical ballad that sits in the background with a voiceover with this imagery. They all look, sound and feel exactly the same. So if we go to our 2 primary tenets in terms of what is effective, especially for memory, first we need is attention. The second is simple. So if everything is sounding the same, you're not getting any attention at all. So it just blends in with the rest of the noise. So incredibly ineffective for your particular brand, even though the brand managers are sitting there giving everyone else in their team a high five and a slap on the back, going, how amazing are we? We're empathetic, we're connecting with the market, when the reality is their market is not even picking up on their radar. They're not even noticing the ad. But yeah, keen to get your thoughts.
So I see. I think you're spot on. The way it's been laid out does nothing to grab attention, does absolutely nothing to build memory, does absolutely nothing to establish anything in my brain or noticing. It's like the entire world is just trying to fly under the radar. And I completely get, I've been thinking about this quite a lot over the last couple of days, is I get it. During a time of crisis, you don't want to be seen as that company that's like, hey, come buy my car, come do this. Woo, wacky me in a tutu, ha ha ha. Here's a crow on my shoulder. What? How crazy. Because ain't nobody got time for that. When human beings are under stress, when we're under threat, we will take anything that makes us feel uncomfortable and assign that to the threat. you now become part of the problem. Leave me alone. How dare you try and get money when people are dying over here? So I get this, I don't want to say aversion, but desire to just coast, to just be like, it's all cool, it's all good, it will come back sooner or later. How do you then establish an identity during a time of crisis? I've been thinking about this. You don't. At first, I totally agreed with everyone in the world who said, okay, this was a bad move for memory. But an interesting thing about stress and crises, so chronic stress, once you hit about 3 or 4 days of a continuous stress response, your memory machinery by and large shuts down. The cortisol, the major stress hormone, sits in your hippocampus, which is, we'll just call the gateway to memory. So you want to remember anything, that information has to go through your hippocampus. At around day 3 or 4 of stress, cortisol starts to kill your hippocampus. It starts to turn it off. And the reason being that your brain assumes that once stress hits a certain length, you're helpless. There's nothing more to learn. You are in a helpless situation, in which case, remember nothing until it's over, and then we'll bring you back out. So I always say, if you step in a bear trap and you know you're not going to get help for a week, you don't want a deep lasting memory for 5 days of trauma. You want no memory or light memory, and then until you're out, and then the machinery comes back on and says, okay, back to reality, let's go. COVID, the first couple months especially, I would say February, March, April, were stress times. Nobody is forming memories anyway. If you come out with a massive campaign, either you're going to revolt people and they're going to automatically tie you to the negativity of the campaign, or they're not going to remember it anyway. So what are all these people doing? They're just coasting. They're just sitting. Memories will start to be made once everything calms down, once the stress response dies. And I actually think we're starting to hit that spot now. We crested this hill probably about 2 weeks ago where things started to feel a little more normal. Now is when you want to say, I did something. So the best companies are the companies like Dyson, which no advertising or anything, but what did they do? They built ventilators. At the time, no one was thinking about it, caring about it. We all just wanted to survive. But in hindsight, we're going to go back and we're going to say, okay, which companies actually did something? Dyson did something. This company, there's a company in the UK that turned their, I think it's what is it, Burberry? Is that a clothing company? Burberry, that's the one. Can you tell I don't wear clothes? Target. Burberry turned one of their factories into doing nothing but making masks and gowns for patients. Now that our memories are going to come back online, we're going to look back and we're going to say, that was good work. Damn, those companies did some work. High five for them. That wasn't a brand. It wasn't an advertisement. It was an action that they knew at this moment we're not ready to think. When we are ready to think again, we're going to think back and go, good work. So whereas first I was thinking all these general advertisements were useless, now I'm starting to think, no, they're actually playing the right game. At this moment, you don't want to stand out, because if you do, you're just going to be linked to a horrible time in somebody's life. You want to coast, and you want to turn it back on once memory and people start to feel normal again.
See, this is super interesting because we've done a lot in terms of historic, especially looking at recessions and even depressions.
Yeah.
And a lot of phenomenal brands advertise quite aggressively during these times for several reasons. One, people had more time on their hands, so they were consuming more media. So media consumption went up.
Yeah.
The cost of media plummeted. So 20 or 30 cents in the dollar. So a beautiful mix if you're looking at efficiencies. That's if you have the financial resources to go to market. So during the times it actually helped them, during these tough periods, hold market share. But then as soon as they came out of them, they just skyrocketed and they took market share like never before. Yeah. So this is really interesting, especially with several of our clients. As soon as the curve had really started to flatten and the narrative and the dialogue in market was more around, when are we opening up things? What's happening with school? Homeschooling sucks. We need to get out. We need to get the economy going again. This is more of the narrative that's going on around us, rather than it's all doom and gloom. We're all going to die. Let's insulate ourselves and wear masks. So as soon as the dialogue and the commentary in media was more around what's happening, when are we going to get out of isolation, we actually started to see both leads from clients naturally jump. But media is still incredibly cheap and, the market's very favorable in that perspective. But now it's interesting that you say that as soon as cortisol is no longer present,
that's when people come
memory
back
starting and they're coming back online, but you kind of nearly need to keep your powder dry a little bit for that moment and just look every recession or depression, you've got the period where people are in panic, they're in fear. Where am I going to get my next meal? How am I going to house my family? All these type of conversations. But as soon as that becomes the norm, or they can see their way out, or, the incredible fear or stress is no longer present, that is your opportunity to go quite aggressively. To hit
hard. And that's what, if you could, this is, now you got prediction, which is one of the hardest things in the world. But if you can predict when you're going to when things are going to calm down, you hit that sweet spot where memory systems come back online. So once you crest that hill and the panic is over, the cortisol's done, the stress is done, things are still cheap. You're the first one out of the gate screaming, look at my tutu, look at my thing. And in that moment, that's when people are we want a tutu, we want a thing. You find the right sweet spot to be the first to jump in at a cheap level there. That's the creme de la creme.
It's fascinating because it's exactly the same as investing. Do you know? Yeah. So as the market's plummeting, and I've had a lot of people come to me going, are you going all in the market? When are you buying? And I'm just like, whoa, I'm not buying anything at the moment because I'm not sold that we're even close to the bottom.
Yeah.
Do you know? And we've seen a big jump and that's nearly correlated with consumer sentiment.
Yeah.
But, as an investor, the last thing you want to do is invest where you don't know that we're coming out of it. Yep. I'd rather go hit the bottom and then we've jumped by 5 or 10%, and then there's some sort of sentiment that
then you can jump.
Then you can actually go in rather than going, time it perfectly, this is the bottom. You nearly need to wait for the market to shift a little bit, and you've got the financial resources then to go.
You know what's good? What's interesting is the marketplace it lags. When you talk about economics and stuff, that kind of all stands on its own world. And that's why it's hard to predict economics, fluctuations and stuff. Human sentiment is very easy to judge because we can feel it. Now, a lot of people don't talk about this. We know this in our work, but we don't quite know how to handle it yet, that human contact is everything. We can read each other's emotions. We can feel when someone says there's a vibe in the room, it's a very specific thing. We don't know what it is yet, but we know it exists. So we're trying to find ways to describe it through mirroring each other, through interpreting each other's body language. But it could be, we're emanating force fields that everyone can feel. Who knows what? But we do know it exists. You know what the world feels like, which means you can ride feelings a lot faster than you can ride money or some obscure abstract concept of wealth. We can feel when the world changes, and we felt it too. I could almost point the day about 2 weeks ago when I looked at my wife and said, it's over. The whole sensation of being in Melbourne just shifted almost overnight. And it was like now, exactly like you said, all of a sudden people started talking about, do we start to go back to schools? When do we open the haircutting places? When do we open the restaurants again? Luckily, since that's the crest for our feeling, for some reason you had enough stuff in the bank where you prepped, where you're like, okay, we already have our ads ready to go. We have this big 1 month branding thing and we're going to do all this stuff. And you just wait and you trust yourself and you go, it just happened, didn't it? And everyone agrees, yep, we're over it. Get it out now. When it's still 20 cents to the dollar, when no one else is paying attention, when everyone else is still playing it safe, because they're now saying, okay, how do we get out of this? You've already prepped for that moment.
But this is the other thing as well. Many brands will wait too late. They'll actually want to see the triggers. They want to see financial reports. They want to see consumer sentiment. Whereas for me, going back to that point, and this is like if you've got any insights, whether it's a machine-based learning platform that it actually measures sentiment and market, where the emotion or the feeling has shifted, that is literally like your buy trigger to go back into the market while it still is 20 cents in the dollar, not 40 or 50 or 70 when it's starting to rebound, buying at a very, very low base, which is 20 cents in the dollar, when everyone else is still sitting on their hands going, I'm not sure it's the right time.
Wait for it.
Correct. I'm not sure. And I think that hesitation will be the catalyst for you to miss out on what is, especially in my opinion, one of the most amazing times for us or brands to build and take market share like never before. But again, you want to go very aggressively with the resources you've got. And there's not many brands out there with a huge amount of resources.
Yeah.
So super interesting.
But I would say too, I think another way you'll see this. So go back to those commercials. I promise you those were made and came out during the time of peak stuff. And so that's why, whereas naturally I'm like, oh, you just lost all recognition. I'm totally fine with that. You already lost recognition anyway. Most people spent the last month watching Netflix. And so I'm just trying to, like, I did the Tiger King one. Did you watch that one yet?
Everyone watched Tiger King.
Okay, so we got Tiger King. Watch. In a couple months, ask yourself what you remember from Tiger King. And it will be next to nothing. The show itself will be next to nothing. You'll remember a couple of names. You'll remember one or two scenes, but it'll be gone. We've just spent the last month in a shell. We put a lot of information in, but we didn't form any memories for it. So whereas initially I was saying, you just wasted your time. You needed to do more. Now I'm going back saying, no, you recognize that this is not that nothing is happening right now. We're all in stasis. So why push during stasis? Wait till spring comes and we start to thaw, and now hit me.
Yeah, there's also, I'm not sure if you've seen it, there was a study that's just come out of, was out of France in terms of brands that have kept their original message all the way through compared to other brands that pivoted to a COVID-19 message.
Or what'd they find?
There was no difference.
Really?
Do you know, the brands that actually kept their message, do you know, it
Didn't
actually
do any better,
didn't do any better, didn't do any worse. Do you know what I mean? So it was like,
really, it's just this black hole of time.
so the results were kind of plateaued or flat. Do you know what I mean? It actually didn't show that there was a decrease in results or performance. There was still the same sort of sentiment.
We get it. This is what I love. Very rarely have we seen it. And I don't know that we've seen it ever in our lifetimes on a worldwide scale. Usually you get it on very small scales. 9/11, the US had it. Some people didn't. If you're ever going through a divorce, you got it. But you recognize where you enter into these black hole times where life is happening, but it's not really happening.
Let me throw this one at you then. So say it's a product that normally gets great traction with a sale, like a 50% off, a 40% off, or some sort of value.
Yeah.
So the people that are in market, and I get that there's a lot of people out there with a high level of cortisol in their body, but say they need a new product for their home that they were going to buy anyway, and they need it and they've got the resources to get it, but you're still promoting it as a 50% off.
Yeah.
Do you know, for me, I think that's an incredibly good thing because you're still helping a consumer solve a problem that they've got, you know, and that's a message they still want to hear. Whereas there's been a lot of people out there going, I don't want to promote a sale message, you know, because, you know, I don't want to feel like I'm trying to sell or be commercial during these times. Whereas the contrary view of that is there's still people out there that need a vacuum cleaner that want 50% off because their vacuum cleaner just broke. But then everyone else that thinks you're going hard at a sale message, they're not going to recall it anyway. So then I'm like, how do you tackle that one, Dr.
So you've got to go. Do you go soft sell message in that case? In that case, because you think about it, especially with everyone taking such a huge hit economically over the last couple of months, the last thing you want is a sales message. You don't want to be seen as not recognizing what's happening in the world. Right after 9/11, you don't want to be the one coming out saying, get a vacuum. You want to be the one to acknowledge 9/11 and to help, we've taken 50% off all of our stock or something like that. So it becomes a soft sell message, which might still in that moment help somebody make the right buying decisions, guide them your way. The one thing you can't expect from that would be long-term memory formation for that. So I'm going to go out, buy my vacuum. It could be a couple months later, somebody says, where'd you get that vacuum? And I'll just be like, you know what? I got it online. I don't really remember. So it's enough during the time to get them in to buy your things, but you can't assume that that's going to have the same impact as general ads.
But I think there's two conversations there. You've got one that's brand.
Yeah.
And you've got another one that's generating revenue for your business right now. Do you know? And if you need revenue to keep your business alive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're still going to have to get revenue into the business. You can't go into hibernation for 1 month, 6 months, 2 years, do you know, waiting for the moment where consumer sentiment changes. If you're selling vacuums, you still have to sell vacuums or your business won't be around when we come out of it. Do you know? So this is, and I think this is a challenge a lot of people are having. They want to be empathetic to the market, but then they don't want to look and feel and sound
outlandish.
But like everyone else in market that's been empathetic, which means especially like in direct response, you call it a grabber, you know, which is the first 3 to 5 seconds of an ad that you get attention. Again, one of the primary tenets that you need to be successful. If you don't have attention, you're nowhere, you know, and that's kind of like if you go very empathetic with a sale message, do you know what I mean? You may not be getting attention, which then you have a message there. So this is where I think a lot of brands are actually really quite confused.
Yeah.
How do we play the current hand that's been dealt to us? I need revenue, so I need to sell, but then I don't want to appear like I'm being, you know, taking advantage of the current market.
But you're right. So you're at odds. So you're right. So the two debates is, one is the brand debate. How do we maintain our identity without looking like assholes? And 2 is the sales debate. How do we sell? To maintain your identity right now, you can't be crazy. To get a sell, you need to get attention. How do you get attention? You have to break a prediction. Right now, if you break the prediction of this is all nonsense, how do you break that prediction? What do you come out and say? COVID is a myth. Haha. Or what did Trump say the other day? Gargle with bleach. Haha. I mean, those messages work, but by being unpredictable, you're actually pissing people off. Because in this moment, I don't want unpredictable. I want stasis. I'm sick of 10 different government people telling me different things. I want one common message.
But then this is, if you break prediction, if you come out with a sales message that you could have run prior to COVID, it's actually sounding very different to everything else that's in market. There's a lot of retail have either shut their doors or, so there's not a lot of retail message going out now. Whereas if you go out with a strong retail message, you definitely break the prediction. But then the challenge you have from a brand perspective, as you may associate your brand to a negative circumstance. But then for me, if you got high levels of cortisol,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter
anyway.
So the only people that are actually going to be listening or taking in the communication are people that are in market now that need a vacuum, need a new sofa. So for me, I'm like, to keep your doors open and everything else, you need to sell product right now, which means you need attention. But then more so than ever, people are holding onto their dollars so tight that nearly the value that you had or the deal or offer that you had pre-COVID needs to be exaggerated. You know, so it's nearly like, you know, normally we have a 50% sale, but we know we get attention. Yeah. We know you're doing it tough. Right now, to help you through this, we're offering an additional 10% off any purchase that happens during lockdown because we want to.
The one thing in that compilation, no one was selling anything.
Nothing.
There was no proposition. It was
all brand.
Yep.
And I get it because the media would have been booked. There was delete and charge and everything else, which is an option you could use. Yep. But there'll be a lot of brands that go, let's just leverage what I've got. Let's just pivot our message to be more relevant.
But they pull it back, and this is funny because this is probably the exact same conversation they were having around a table at this time. And you see, even you and I were going up and down. Sometimes you can break through, sometimes you can't, and you kind of keep settling back on this middle ground where it's like, let's just be cool with everything. Because so if you're in the middle of a crisis, if you're in the middle of chronic stress, one of the few things to break through and kick you back into gear are additional threats. So if I'm stuck in my bear trap and I'm having a good old, I'm not remembering much of anything until somebody comes with a gun and points it at my face. That's a secondary threat. That's enough to break through. Now I'm going to remember this. Boom. If the baseline prediction during this crisis time is calm, relax, family, be cool, be happy, to break that prediction, it can't be nice. The only way to come through that prediction is going to be a secondary threat. And in which case, that's where I see a lot of brands saying, well, I don't want to be seen as a bonus threat. I don't want to break through your fog knowing the only way to really do that is to scare the daylights out of you, in which case now you're going to hate me even more. Yeah. And it's like, so that's why I kind of, if you have the money, like all these ads did, the UPSs and stuff, I don't mind the coasting. I don't mind just saying 2 months.
It's the safe option, you know, as a brand manager.
Yeah.
You know, you've invested in your brand over 10, 20, 50, 100 years. The one thing that you don't want to do is something that's going to have a negative detriment to your brand. So again, this is why a lot of large brands will tend to play it safe.
Just coast.
You know, because the last thing they want to do is have a negative impact on their brand or association, rather than going, where's the opportunity? And an interesting one that's just come to me now was we've actually had a brand that usually has very aggressive sale messages. They've pivoted to more of an educational product-based, nearly a motivational, inspirational type of, and it's demonstrating product and how it transforms, part of their house and other bits and pieces, which has been interesting. It still hasn't worked and they're still not doing anywhere near the same sales revenue they were prior. But if you're looking at all the metrics, it's actually really encouraging, because anyone that's in the market for this particular product or industry is still going and doing their research and they're moving in the funnel. They may not be transacting now, but you're still getting their interest because there's a problem there that they're looking to solve anyway. But from a brand perspective, it may not be there, but it's demonstrating something they may not have considered. But
so you're not saying nothing, you're saying something different. You're teaching them, which is more than just saying, hey, we're in this together.
We've been around for 80 years.
Been around, we exist. So you pivot. And then now watch, when you pivot back to sales, I actually reckon we're back in the time now for sales, right? I think, especially in Melbourne.
What are we now? We're coming to late April. Do you know, I saw it about a week ago where it really started to shift, and I saw volumes come back for a lot of brands, and a lot of brands were actually calling me going, it's nowhere near as bad as what I thought it was going to be.
See, everyone, we felt it. Every human being felt it. And we all knew when it happened. It was the ones that were already prepped and already had stuff in the can. Are we allowed to swear in our world?
Of course we can.
Okay. But people who already had shit in the can and said, the moment's here, go, pop, go, are doing fine. That's what I think. Moving forward, my big takeaway is going to be that. During times of crisis, memories are already going to be out. So everyone's just in a cocoon. You'll know when the crisis is over, not by metrics, not through AI, not through statistics on CNN. You're going to know by feeling. You're going to wake up one morning and the world will feel different. Trust that instinct. That is a thing.
So it's nearly the brands that are more in tune to EQ than anything else are the ones that are going to come out on top because they'll be able to navigate through it more intuitively than...
And the ones that trust it. So you get a bunch of guys around a table, and right now all of them would agree, oh, it feels different. And then they'd intellectually debate. So is it time now to jump in? Don't worry about the intellectual debate. If everyone around the table knows it's done, if you feel it, act as though it's done.
Which is so interesting because you've got your owner that's in a small, it might be owner occupier that's also the CEO. They'll ultimately have the final say. If they feel it, they will take the punt, and they've got a higher tolerance for risk as well. And we're seeing that where they're getting more aggressive.
Yep.
Whereas if you've got the bigger institutions that are governed by a lot of boards that are very much stuck in head rather than heart and emotion, they will wait and they'll delay because there's risk appetite there, but they also thinking their way through it.
Like you in investments, they're going to wait till there's enough actual hard data to show me that the market's coming up. Now I'll invest.
Correct.
When really, the people who got it big were the ones who felt it.
But this also goes through risk reward. Brands at a higher risk appetite will read the play potentially better and go more aggressively when they feel the shift, where it's 20 cents in the dollar, not for the brands that are waiting till it's 70 cents in the dollar. And the opportunity has been missed.
And the good news, what I like about this though, is you can assume with a crisis like this, the risk is done. Even if we hit a secondary peak, and there's almost every chance to think we will not hit the same stressor as we did the first time.
Why is that?
Because we've been here before. A stressor can only, if this is going to sound horrible, but if 9/11 would have happened a year later, we would have had enough emotional resilience and resources to deal with it differently. One of the things that makes a primary stressor so unique is usually it's unprecedented, it's unknown. And do you remember when this first started coming out? When nobody knew what the heck was going on. So for us, it really hit late Feb. In Hong Kong, it was kind of late Jan. I happened to be there when it was really going there. And you wake up and you just don't know what to expect. You feel completely, I don't watch the news. I haven't watched it for years. I would watch the news for about 6 hours a day because I just don't know what the heck is happening. We hit a secondary peak. We'll know exactly what's happening. We'll say, oh, this is the same as before. They're going to put us back into temporary lockdown. We're going to have all these stage 3. So the stressor won't hit anywhere near as hard, which means I would say once you feel this first peak is down, go to town, hit it up. Because even if we hit a second peak, it's all right. Or we're back online. We're not going to react the same way. So you can just keep on brand. You can keep messaging, keep doing what you do.
It's fascinating because for me, it's stress conditioning. Do you know, it's like the first time you jump out of a plane.
Yep.
You know, you don't recall much at all. Literally, the cortisol levels, the stresses are so high that it's literally just surviving to get through it.
Yep.
By the time you've jumped out 100 times of a plane, you're so conditioned to the stress, that is actually just the new normal.
Boom.
Do you know, so you can actually navigate your way through it. So for me, and this is to my point, if you look at depressions or recessions, .com bubble, no one knew what was going on for 6 months, 12 months. Yeah. But the more they got used to this is the new environment, you're conditioned to the level of stress, and this would be interesting in looking at world wars and other things as well. Did people get more used to the level of stress, than what they were previously? And I think that's very hard to answer because no one was actually here. Yeah. But, for me, when do people get sort of acclimatized to the new norm? That for me, then as soon as your cortisol's out of your hippocampus, then you can start forming memory. That is your opportunity as an advertiser or someone in brand to get more aggressive as soon as that peak is really started to diminish and it becomes the new baseline. You may see the economic fundamentals not have changed, but in terms of the psychology of the people within your nation, that is your key metric, rather than what's happening in the, the economy or the state of play, because the stress may be out, but they're not spending as yet but the spending will always come back.
It's going to be there. So when was the right time to jump on? So we call it, by the way, it's the term, it's habituation. We have it. Every animal goes through it. Once you habituate to a circumstance, you stop responding to that circumstance in the same way. Right now, we've all habituated to COVID. So even if it comes back in the next 6 months, we're habituated. It's not going to hit us the same way. If another disease came out, that'd probably be a different stressor where now we don't know how many people are dying. We don't know how fast it's spreading. We could go right back in. We don't necessarily carry our habituation across all stimuli. But in this instance, I would say if you live in Melbourne at least or Australia, business as usual now. We're back.
Love it. So this is from the archives. This is the classic. So this is one of the great ads that has been and gone before us. What can we learn before it? So today we are looking at Cadbury. Not only just Cadbury, we're looking at the Cadbury Gorilla.
Roll it. And now like those purple lines go 80s.
It's time for a blast from the past.
So there we have it. There we have the Cadbury Gorilla with the famous Phil Collins. So Jared, please talk us through thoughts on why this was such an amazing and memorable ad.
Two big reasons why. Well, three big reasons why. One, you have to go back to the time. So looking at this commercial today, you're like, oh, it's just a funny little quip. But you got to remember when this was done, funny little quip commercials weren't popular. They weren't the norm. Now everyone and their mother just has funny dude dancing, bird on the shoulder, we're having a good old time. Hey, that's so normal that now if we saw a gorilla play the drums, we go, cool. That wouldn't even garner a like. Back in the day when advertising when this came out, it was very much more specific, especially in the UK and here. It was more like Bunnings ads. Here's what we got. Here's what we're going to do. So when this comes out, boom, I've already got your attention. It's a prediction break. It's really cool. Two, they use their branding at the front end and the back end. So you immediately know where we were coming in. We knew where we were going out, and the purple behind it only exists to one brand. It's Cadbury. So you never forgot what it was you were watching. Three, they did the classic memory hijack. We all love the Phil Collins song. I don't know that there's a human being alive who doesn't air drum that solo. So they know you've got a deep memory for this thing. All they've got to do is weasel their way in and build an association close enough to that drum solo that every time you hear it from now on, you're going to think of that damn gorilla. And anytime you think of that damn gorilla, you're going to think of that damn Cadbury. They don't need to build a deep memory for you. They picked a memory they know you got, and they weaseled their way in, and they just plumped themselves next to it. And now, just like a spider web, whenever you access Phil Collins and it starts to spread out and activate all the associations, in this comes. So it was a timely spot on, smart move that I think actually changed a lot of advertising after this. I think that's the kind of thing that leads to a lot of the silliness we see now is, oh, it worked so well here. It must work now when we do it over here.
But the fundamental thing a lot of brands are missing now is they don't have that memory hijack. They're literally just doing silliness to get attention rather than associating it to either anything that you can leverage. So, you know, Phil Collins consistently comes up in the top 100 of all time songs. You know, the association with it is phenomenal, and you literally go through it. And for me, the real gold was actually in the execution, because this could have gone horribly wrong as well. But the gorilla itself looks like a drummer. The gorilla.
You musicianist. That's like a racist for musicians. Looks like a drummer? How dare you?
It not only looked like, but it had the emotion. You could feel the emotion, and it matched the emotion of the song. Do you know? So,
and you didn't know, they did a very good reveal. You didn't know what the hell they were doing for the first 10 minutes or 10 seconds. You're like, okay.
And that was kind of the ultimate. It wasn't just the gorilla there where you're just like, what is it doing? What's happening? It built the suspense. Do you know what I mean? You're just like, what is it? I know the song. That's very familiar, but what I'm seeing now is very unfamiliar. What's going? So got attention. It's holding attention, and it held attention for quite a period of time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it breaks out into that drum solo that everyone knows. But the execution of the drum solo, and it was interesting, I had to dig into to find out about the character, which was actually a primate. That's actually his job is a primate imitator, but he's also a musician. And he spent 3 days just practicing he was a guitarist by trade.
Yeah.
So he actually had to learn how to play the drums, and spent 3 days learning how to play the drums precisely to imitate what a drummer would actually do, but then also bring the primate characteristics to the whole. So for me, that was kind of the beauty. The idea was there, but the execution was so seamless that you actually formed this real bond, and you just fell in love with the gorilla as well, because you're like, he's a boss. And I'm like,
he's cool. He's cool, and he's emotional. If it was just a dude in a suit with no emotions, and the first couple bits where you're like, okay, is he gonna sing the song? No, he's not singing. Oh, he's just feeling it. Oh, everything about it. You know who this makes me think of? Triple M a couple months ago started their giraffe singing in a mirror campaign, which is apparently the same thing as this, except A, they don't put Triple M until the very end, in which case you're usually already turned out. B, there's no memorable music, so I couldn't tell you. And C, gorilla's cool. This is going to sound weird. You want to go have a drink with that gorilla. Like, you want to be like, man, that gorilla is cool. Like, I want to go smoke a doobie. Are the kids still using that with that gorilla? The giraffe is just goddamn silly. It's like, if that was my kid, I'd be like, go do your homework. Get out of the room. You're annoying me. So it's like I could see almost the exact same commercial done well versus done poorly.
It's fascinating because my wife, especially with like the TV's kind of on as background noise, and that's all the rest of it. But one of the ads that she'd loved over the last couple of months, which isn't many, was the giraffe ad. But you ask her, who's it actually for? And she's like, oh, I've got no idea. I'm like, what song was it? And she's like, I don't know, but I just love the giraffe was kind of all over the place.
Dancing around.
So the memory for her was she remembered the giraffe dancing, do you know what I mean, to the tune, but no recollection of the brand or, funnily enough, the song.
You know you've hit it when somebody says the blank, the brand, and then the thing. The Cadbury gorilla. The Geico gecko. You know you've nailed it.
But that's where you need the associations. And if you don't have the associations, and that's for me, the execution of Cadbury was phenomenal because you got purple throughout the entire execution. It's not reliant on, and that was a 1.5-minute ad, so 90 seconds. They actually did the full 4.5 minutes of the song. Or the full track, so you can get the full track, but for commercial purposes, it went live with the 90-second version.
Yeah.
But throughout it was Cadbury purple, Cadbury purple, Cadbury purple, Cadbury purple. So throughout the song, you've always got these opportunities to associate the song with Cadbury and the gorilla, and then it reinforces right at the end with the brand. Whereas you see so many ads that will tell this beautiful narrative and this beautiful story that'll pull you in emotionally, and it's got your attention, and it holds it for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and then it goes blank screen and then a hero shot of the product or brand. And as soon as we see blank screen or a transition, we go end of memory, new story, new chapter, and then all you have that. So there's no association to the brand, to the actual,
the product itself. You actually stop your memory. It's interesting to think, though, would this have been possible with a brand that didn't already have 50 years of an established identity? Was this possible because we, like the golden arches, the yellow and gold, the purple there, we have enough of a memory of a brand, and the brand has been on point for so many years, decades, that they can actually get away with just having a color, and we automatically start doing the association because I never see that color anywhere else. So you might have to, for this kind of commercial to succeed, so take Triple M. There's no color scheme I know of. I guess there's flames in the M's, maybe, but they don't have enough.
It's not that distinctive, though. You can't just look at that and you just go, that's 100% Triple M. Like, it's actually the logo that you see.
Yeah. So what if they had, so maybe you've got to earn the right to be silly and still make a memory. You've got to do the legwork, which is 5 years of just establishing brand, colors, logos, this.
Before you've got the right to play in the...
Now go do something silly, and you've got enough of a memory that people can trigger. You've just got that one cue. Boom, I've seen the purple. This is Cadbury. Now what are you going to do for me? I see the gecko now is, maybe they did that enough. That you see the gecko, you immediately go Geico. Do you have to establish an identity already, some trigger, or else do you just have to start with it? Hi, this is going to be horrible, but hi, this is Triple M. Here's a commercial for you about a singing giraffe. Like, do you have to?
Or you have a tattoo on the giraffe or something like that
that makes it part of the actual thing.
And that's for me, like when you're looking at a creative, you've got to have where the memory actually encodes.
Yep.
You want your brand associated to it, or that is associated to, and that's where the gorilla. So you go Phil Collins to gorilla to Cadbury purple and Cadbury brand. That is how it flows. Whereas if you go, remember the crazy giraffe, there's no connect to anything else. I can't even recall the song, let alone the song which is a rock song, to a Triple M, which is a rock radio station.
Yeah.
So that's where the disconnect actually happens. So for me, it's an interesting point that you've got to have a branded asset that's distinctive enough that you can actually pair with it. So if you look at Geico Gecko or, the meerkats from Compare the Market, you've got to invest in these assets so much, so building a new memory takes a huge amount of effort and work to actually establish it.
Yeah.
And then you got to remind and refresh consistently. So this is where brands they're continually changing their long-term branded assets. They're continually having to start from scratch and rebuild rather than reinvesting in the memories that people already have.
And you can earn that. I think McDonald's can change its theme song, but they don't. That's the joke. The brands who have earned the right to chop and change every 2 weeks, because we've already got 50 years of deep memory for them, typically still don't. They still play the game where it's like, we're going to use one logo, one brand for 2 years. And then we're going to use da-da-da-da-da for years, even though we don't have to, just because we're still playing the game where we're going to build a really stupidly deep memory for you.
Totally.
Who did it well, kind of sidetracked, was Kohl's with the Down Down song.
Yeah.
I remember it came out, it was annoying, everyone did it, but they kept doing it for about 2 years. And recently, maybe about a year ago, they changed. And it really kind of irked me. It was like, okay, you took the time to build this, now use it. Now I'm in. Okay, you got your Down Down song. Don't go to a different version of it now. Don't go to someone else. Keep being annoying, keep being silly, because every time I hear it, every time I go into your store, I sing it. Now you've built a memory network, use it. But then they switched to something else recently, and I'm like, oh, I missed my Down Down song.
Totally. But this is like to remind and refresh is the game. And, they've had the purple, which is so strong that's where you can pull and tie everything else together. That was kind of the anchor to the brand. Without that, it wouldn't have been anywhere near successful. But
that's all I think. When I think about the gorilla, I think about purple.
Yeah.
And then I go to Cadbury. So without that purple background.
Well, that's kind of your flow then, isn't it? You've got Phil Collins to gorilla to purple to Cadbury.
And it's an easy chain.
It's an easy chain.
Man, I've got giraffe. That's it. Hey, do you remember driving down the secondary side, driving down the M2 from the airport into the city?
Yeah.
They had the ad with the giraffe singing so it was a billboard, the giraffe singing in the mirror with the Triple M, I guess, logo on the side. Took me 3 trips till I could decipher what that was. It was the weirdest. Do you know how sometimes you look at something and you just can't make heads or tails of it because you don't have a prediction to put it in? It's like, what am I actually looking at here? I couldn't tell that it was a giraffe looking in a mirror until the third time. And you feel this moment. So I can tell you exactly what's going on. It's the difference between what's called your predictor and your coder. And usually you have a very solid prediction for how things work, so you can just run your prediction cool. But every once in a while, you'll see something that fits no prediction, and you can feel your gears going, what the hell is this? It took me 3 times of looking at that ad to even determine what the hell I was looking at. It was the weirdest, and I paid a lot of attention. I couldn't pick out the fact that it was a giraffe looking in a mirror. It was just colors and angles. I'm like, what? It looked like a magic eye to me. It was like, what am I looking at? And then the third time I saw it, I'm like, oh God, what the hell is that? It was the weird. I just thought, I don't know if it was because the colors were all the same or it was just so unexpected, but I hated it. It caused me to look at it a lot.
It's a great point because then, some creatives will actually go, that's an amazing thing because I got attention. I got someone to think about it. Do you know what I mean? Which then calls them to.
I'm talking about it. I remember.
You're talking about it. You remember it and you remember the journey. So they go, big tick, we're winning.
Yeah.
But then you just go, what percentage of the population would actually invest the time and energy and effort
to trying to decipher it?
Exactly. Whereas majority of people would just go, too hard, don't get it.
Yeah.
Doesn't even hit any of my unconscious, let alone, your prefrontal cortex or anything like that. So for me, it's literally like it never happened. So I think this is a debate a lot of creatives actually have with creating something that you need to use some of your processing power to think about and understand versus something that's so simple. And I always go back to the 2 tenets, which is attention and simple. Simplicity. If you break either of those rules, chances are you're dead.
You're going to get an interesting percentage of the market share, the 0.1% like me who just go, I got to figure this out. And you're going to get 99.9% of the people who say, I got other stuff to do with my
Correct.
time.
So it's definitely not a mass, but it's usually, interestingly enough, it's usually people who are in the industry, which are advertising and marketing people, that will talk about it and discuss it. So we're legends in our own lunchboxes, and that's why creatives love it because that's in their market and everyone's talking about it. Whereas the reality is, from a commercial perspective, what impact did that have on revenue?
Yeah.
Did that acquire new customers to your brand or business? Is that going to help you move your brand or business forward? For me, that's the ultimate metric of success of any advertising or marketing.
It was funny. Growing up, we used to say, would you rather be famous or respected in your field? Famous or respected in your field? And we usually come back to, I want to be respected in my field. I want other people to know, who do what I do, to like what I do. But the older I get, the more, and that's always the selection you pick. The older I get, the more I'm like, it's a circle jerk. I don't care what the other people in my profession think that I do. I want to be effective. I don't care about famous. I don't care about being respected in my field. I want to be effective outside of my field.
Correct.
And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck in my field likes me. Who cares?
But then that becomes a game of ego, in terms of like, wow, I got to go back to Hungry Jack's, Burger King. I've got a piece of work out that everyone's talked about. Do you know what I mean? Aren't I sort of famous in my particular field or everyone respects me? Versus how effective, I'd rather go in and just go, I have 10x this brand over 18 months through my strategy, and everyone just goes, I don't remember the strategy at all. And I go, I don't care. Look at the revenue.
And that's what I can't go to science. Science is nothing but a global circle jerk. Most scientists want respect and citations from other scientists. And you're actually ostracized when you step out of there and say, but what impact are we having on the real world? And I came up through science, and so I get it, is I want to be respected in my field. I want everyone who does brain stimulation to think about me and say, man, that guy does good work. Why? It took me years to figure out, but that's literally a group of 200 people who do nothing but talk to each other. Are we healing people? No. Are we changing the world? No. Are we impacting education? No. So what do? I realized, screw it. Third option, let's go make an actual impact. Now I go out there, I'll work with 1,000 I'll impact 1,000 teachers in a year versus 0. And I actually get shit on by my crew. The science people are like, oh, you're popular. You're out there in the world doing pseudoscience. It's like, no.
I'm actually creating change.
I'm just not looking for your validation anymore. I'm
Correct.
out there. And so when we all die, it's more important to have that impact. What is the goal for this? If your goal is ego, sweet, you're doing your thing. But if your goal is to better the world, to impact how people think and work, then that's got to be your outcome.
But isn't that legacy? Like, you're talking, the bigger the change you have to more people, that is legacy.
It's the switch from the warrior's journey to the king's journey. So take all your narratives, take all your stories, your archetypes. Most people in their 20s and 30s sit in the warrior narrative, walking through the hero's journey. I need to discover who I am. I need to establish my identity. I need to show that I can take on the world with my resources. That's an awesome narrative. But as you start to get older, you necessarily switch into the king's narrative, which is, okay, who cares about me? Enough. Now I got to outward look and I've got to establish a legacy. What impact am I having on the wider world? How is this going to change based on the actions I do? And that's where I think most of the ego-based stuff I used to do was exactly what I needed to do. Was I want respect from people in my field. Why? Because that's me establishing my identity. I don't care. I'm going to die now. Now my thing is, what is my legacy? What am I going to leave?
What an interesting point. Because now you go into business, commerce, brand, marketing, advertising. If you come with ego, I want to create something that I can be proud of, that I can show my peers and I get validation from, it's serving me.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go, how do I solve more people's problems? How can I be more effective on mass? I don't care about what the perception is. I just want the outcome. That is the ultimate service because you help more people. So for a brand to come from of service rather than ego, that is where you win, you know, especially not only from impact, but where it counts from a business perspective, which is, you know, the P&L.
Take the king's archetype. Maybe that becomes our new thing, the king's archetype, because that's it. Is how am I of service? Because it's the weirdest thing. You realize you're going to die, and no offense, no one's going to remember us in 100 years. So you've really got two massive choices. I mean, think about how many people can you name from the 1800s? Full up. 20?
Dozen probably at best.
And this is where you're like, that's an entire century, and I'm pulling out maybe 20 names. Ego and personal identity don't last. Legacy lasts. I can tell you what's changed because of what has happened in the 1800s.
But if you look at it, and I'd suggest that every individual that you name will have come from a place of service rather than a place of ego.
Because the changes they wrought were we won't know about them. I can't tell you when they were born. I can't tell you what they liked, what they ate, but I can tell you what impact they had.
Einstein wasn't there for his own good. He was there trying to serve. You literally pick any, you know, Isaac Newton wasn't there for himself. It was there to serve.
This could become a little segment on the show called The Warrior versus the King. And we could find ads like the Burger King one, which says, here's a warrior, here's ad people, creatives trying to impress each other.
Well, how fascinating, because if you tie that back from a warrior, because it's all about us, look what we've done, no preservatives, bold, got a lot of name, rather than king, in terms of how do you educate consumers, this is what preservatives do. You know, if you're after the best vehicle for yourself, health and nutrition angle, do you know what I mean? That is serving people, and you're creating product that now serves people rather than, you know, and I think that's where the narrative has actually been missed. So it's interesting looking at.
And how good would that have been? Now go back to that original point. You have a series of commercials, which is take all the ingredients of a burger, bread, meat, tomato, lettuce. And the commercial is one tomato just sitting there for 30 days, one tomato rotting for 30 days, with farmers or nutritionists or someone in the corner saying, oh my God, I can't believe that one's not changing. Look, that's disgusting. You want mold. If it doesn't have mold, even the natural world won't eat it. Why would we put that in our body? You don't even show your burger. You're educating to the point where now you hit your burger, put all those ingredients together, show this. You've primed me, you've taught me, you've given me something to really work with. And now you reverse the camera and all of a sudden I'm on with you. You go, cool, nice little ad campaign there.
And I'll take it one step further. You've got Hungry Jack's current customer base, you know, that have been eating preservatives. They're pivoting to no preservatives. Do their customer base actually know what preservatives do to the human body or not? So that's one.
Sounds like they should be good. Oh, preservatives, I'm going to live longer.
Yeah. And then you got, you know, or are they trying to talk to a completely different sort of more educated market that know what preservatives are and the impact they have? But then there's no point comparing your brand to McDonald's because they're never going to go to McDonald's anyway, but they may now go to you. So for me, if you had the King's Journey, bring your people with you, educate them so they'll never go to McDonald's again.
Yep.
And then talk to a new audience or a new kingdom and help bring them into your broader kingdom as well. And as a result, your land mass or your territory is far greater when you come from a place of service rather than a place of ego.
I love that. That's going to be our new segment. We're going to find one ad that is from
A King's Journey.
And then one that's purely self-serving warriors. And we just show them side by side and say, maybe we start to suss out the differences and say, hey, do you notice which is which? Clearly one is just done for sake of cool building an identity, and one is done for change.
Place of service.
Boom.
Love
I think
it.
That's wonderful.
Dr. Jared, thank you for coming in.
No, thank you. Another great session.
Another great session. Episode 2. Looking forward to episode 3. There's some really interesting stuff happening at the moment. But thanks, Dr. Jared. Until next time.
Should we look in our camera?
Yeah.